Welcome! My name is Renato Orellana, a content designer at Petroglyph Games, and we're delighted to show you an exclusive first look at the Central Powers campaign in the Great War Western Front. In our upcoming strategy game, you'll step into the role of both theater commander and field commander across World War I's Western Front as you relive or redefine history. When you start a new campaign, you'll get the option of selecting either a 1914 or a 1916 start. Here, we've jumped into the 1916 campaign and played a few turns so that we're ready to make our first significant strike against the Allies. Now, as the game is already in progress, it just so happens that at the start of this turn, a historical event has occurred. In the Great War Western Front, historical events such as these will bring about positive or negative consequences that may directly impact the course of the war. Here, the event Spies Everywhere will deal such a demoralizing blow to our faction that 5 national will points will be subtracted from a running total upon continue. Now, maintaining your national will is of critical importance as it is one of the ways of winning or losing the war, and will rise or fall based on the decisions you make, both here in the theater or on the battlefield. Here, you can see the campaign map, where you'll act as theater commander and direct the overall war effort by reducing the enemy's national will to 0, or aiming to push back the front line and capture their command region. Now, central to making progress in the campaign are your reserves of gold and supply. Gold reserves indicate the performance of your faction's economy and are used to replenish units after battle, purchase supporting machinery such as artillery batteries, and to build up regional structures like field hospitals. Using gold reserves, you could buy supply. Supply is vital when you're on the battlefield, and you'll need to ensure your forces in the region are backed up with a supply depot to allow them to draw from your overall pool. Digging new trenches, firing artillery barrages, and bringing new troops into the trenches all cost supply, so it's vital you keep an eye on this. As we're already part way through the war, a number of technologies are already researched and available to us. Each side of the conflict begins the game with different technologies researched. In our case, as the Central Powers, we're more likely to already have upgrades to our trenches, such as high-yield explosives and concrete pit. In order to advance our technology, you'll require research points, which are gained each turn, and additional ones can be acquired either through further research efficiencies or through events. We'll show more on these later on. As commander, the decision on where to focus your faction's greatest minds is up to you for now. We're going to put our research points into Death from Below. This grants us access to undermining, a technology which we can deploy as a field commander in order to disrupt the enemy's defenses during key battles. Here, we've been setting up to attack Verdun, and we've had some initial success, which you can see as its lost stars. Stars on the campaign map show the strength of that region, and only a great victory will reduce stars. However, that is only the first step, as subsequent attacks are needed to overwhelm and capture a region, as only by taking the final star will the region be yours. Sounds simple, right? Yet, there is a bit of a catch, as at the end of a turn, any region which has not been subjected to an attack will replenish one missing star, gaining its strength back. On this screen, we can see our total forces in the region which we can commit to an attack. We'll build these up to ensure when we take the battlefield we have plenty of reinforcements able to overwhelm the enemy trench lines. You can see the number of units in a region visually on the map, but also in the lower right hand of the screen, where you can see a breakdown of the troops and different unit types. We'll highlight some of these a little later on. As we're holding Thionville comfortably, we can move some of our forces across to support our planned assault on Verdun. We can split our troops to leave some in the region whilst we move the rest over to Longwy.
Wir sind unterwegs.
Now, troops have moved, so we can't use them in an attack this turn, but we'll be ready to strike. While we prepare though, there are a couple of things we can do. In the Great War Western Front, each side of the conflict comes with its own unique bonuses and challenges. The Central Powers don't suffer from disunity of command, a morale penalty which affects allied forces who represent a number of different nations. They also have access to conscript infantry, a low-cost unit which can be used to bolster their forces. Additionally, throughout the campaign, unique events will grant additional resources as the Western Front becomes the focus of our war efforts. Espionage was used throughout World War I, and we can use this to identify weaknesses in our neighboring regions, understanding troop numbers and the structures our foes have created to attempt to hold it. Our mission was a success, and we now understand more about our target region of Verdun, as when selected, we can now see the number of cores available to the enemy. Of course, espionage missions can both succeed and fail depending on a number of factors. One such factor being that for each success you have with either army or region intel, it will lower the success chance of the next one being used during this turn. We can also build up key regions by investing in structures such as a field hospital, which will allow us to reduce the supply costs to get our soldiers back in fighting shape. We'll end the turn here in order to ensure we're fully prepared for the battle ahead. Verdun will recover a star as they reinforce their defenses, so we'll have to use multiple offensives in the same region to claim it for ourselves. But right now, it's best we have the full complement of our soldiers ready. Now, in order to advance the turn, we can click on the button above the date on the lower right-hand side of the screen. However, notice the exclamation point over it? That implies that before we are allowed to end our turn, we must read any unread events. First off, we receive another historical event, Great Arab Revolt, which when continued will grant us some German conscript infantry corps, as well as a hit to our national will due to the historical context of the event. Alongside these difficult decisions, you'll also experience events which will challenge you to complete additional objectives in order to achieve a reward. Currently, we have an event called Liquid Courage, which prompts us to spend some research points and build a canteen in any region. We have 5 turns to complete it, and in return we get some supply as a reward. Once your turn is over, the AI will make their move. Our opponent is able to conduct the same moves as us, including scouting our territory, researching new technology, and declaring an attack. It looks like the enemy is attempting to take Lille. Prior to the battle, you'll have an opportunity to assess the potential outcome. As a defender here, we can choose to take command of our forces ourselves, auto-resolve for an instant outcome, or avoid the battle entirely by surrendering, taking a great loss, but preserving our forces for a possible counteroffensive. We'll be taking you onto the battlefield later on, so for now, we'll auto-resolve and accept the outcome of the battle. This might not be the best option every time, so it's up to you to weigh the risks and outcomes using the predictions to guide you. So now that we've prepared for battle, we can send our forces into the region. Thankfully, there are no weather conditions adversely affecting our battle today, but commanders should always be wary that it's not only our own actions which will change the battlefield, but the effects of nature itself. A carefully planned offensive can be scuppered by adverse weather effects, turn the tide in favor of our enemy. Before the battle begins, we can see the units we're committing, our supply available, any territory modifiers, such as Pride of France, and a prediction range on the outcome if we're to auto-resolve the battle. Auto-resolving a battle is a calculated risk. You'll get an instant resolution, but it may not be what you expected. To give us total control, we'll oversee the battlefield ourselves. As you can see, we're now overlooking the trenches left from our previous battles. In the Great War, Western Front, a living, persisting world reflects all our previous battles fought in the region, including existing trench networks that we created in an initial assault. Now, before the battle begins, there are a number of different options available to us in the pre-battle stage, which acts as the month in the build-up to this particular conflict. As commander, you're able to redraw the trench lines, which persist from previous battles. For example, here we are upgrading some of our trenches to provide additional support to our units before they head over the top, using some of our supply to improve these. The trenches we dig will remain on this battlefield when we return, and the terrain is already showing the scars of previous hard-fought battles. Supply is also vital in allowing us to place troops on the battlefield, which will set across our front lines. Let's take a look at some of the unique units available to us as the central powers. Conscript infantry are less effective than standard infantry. However, an advantage in numbers can often be the difference between stalemate and victory, overwhelming enemy trench lines. Grenadiers, meanwhile, are the central power's answer to allied raiders, equally adept at melee combat, but with an advantage in their extensive use of grenades, which allows us to make light work of allied machine gun nests. And here, the Flakpanzer, the perfect counter to Allied aerial assaults. This mobile anti-air vehicle will allow you to protect your men on the ground and in the skies from any resistance. To protect your soldiers crossing no man's land, we'll place some heavy and light artillery placements, providing us with different offensive and defensive capabilities. We can, for example, choose to fire a precision barrage from our heavy field artillery to suppress and cover their approach. We'll also place down some observation balloons, a key technological advancement which will give us more sight of the battlefield. However, these are tied to a vehicle which leaves it exposed, so it's important to balance the range of our balloons by placing them towards the front of our trenches while still ensuring they're protected from any incursions. Likewise, destroying our enemy's balloons will reduce their own visibility. Our new technology, undermining, gives us the opportunity to entirely disrupt our opponent's front line by tunneling the enemy lines and placing explosives directly under a key position, ready to be used when we choose. I'll place them here as to maximize their disruption. Battle begins, and we'll start by using our in-game time controls to allow us to coordinate our initial assault. We can choose to slow down the game, speed it up, or pause the game altogether, which is what we'll go for in this instance, so our commands are issued all at once. Observation balloons can be raised and lowered to give additional protection from balloon-busting air missions. When they're grounded, the amount of the battlefield we can clearly see is reduced. We're right at the start of the battle, and with no enemy air units in sight, let's get them airborne. We'll start by targeting key points in the enemy's front line with our artillery to suppress them, which will prevent them from being able to immediately retaliate whilst our troops are out in the open, crossing no man's land. Each set of troops can individually target a specific trench, so I'll issue an order to push forward and displace those enemies the moment our artillery is fired. As you could see, timing is everything, as the enemy was able to fend off my first attack. However, when things get too unwieldy, we can always pause and prepare to send a second wave.
Bereit machen! An die Linie! Sperrfeuerwalze befohlen! Feuerwalze einleiten! Seid bereit, das ist zu viel! Rückt zu! Bereichsfeuerwalze! Alle laden abfeuern! Bereit für Feuerbefehle! Achtung!
Good, but not great. Now with the enemy's defenses suppressed, it's time to strike the fatal blow. We have our undermine explosives which, when detonate, will silence the guns of the enemy higher on the ridge, providing support. The undermine explosion, the melee combat, and the time artillery allow us to push into the trench. However, the enemy was still able to push back. Now, with the enemy defenses weakened, it's time to send in grenadiers before the enemy decides to send in planes. Relive or redefine history when the Great War Western Front launches on Steam and the Epic Games Store on March 30th. By pre-ordering now, you can access the game 3 days early for March 27th. Good luck, Commander. The Western Front is yours to command.